The Batman first swung into cinemas in the 1940s with a couple of serials from Columbia Pictures. It wasn't until the 1960s when the popular TV series spun off into a feature film. Then the 80s brought us Tim Burton's dark, hyper-stylized version of Gotham City. In the 90s, Joel Schumacher took the cowl in a more campy direction. Then Christopher Nolan made Batman gritty, tough, and more realistic. Throughout Batman's movie history, fans have debated just who's the greatest Caped Crusader of all time. Just in time for The Dark Knight Rises, here's my list of the top 6 cinematic Batmen of all time. Number 6, George Clooney. I don't want to belabor the fact that Batman and Robin sucked. I think we can all agree it was pretty awful. George didn't really have much to work with here. He was given a crummy costume, he had a stupid car, the script was terrible. Frankly, he was set up to fail. None of his scenes as Bruce Wayne had much weight. Joel Schumacher had decided to take the character in a lighter, more kid-friendly direction.
For me, there weren't many options. In the fourth Batman, and we talked about this because there were some pages originally written that had him, dealing with his parents being dead again. And I said, he's a 35-year-old guy who lives in a giant mansion and has billions of dollars and goes out with the most beautiful women in the world and has the coolest toys and is Batman. And I don't think anybody is going to feel sorry for and listen to a guy going, woe is me, my parents died when I was 4. So the only thing we tried to do was give him a little less weight to carry on his shoulders.
Without that brooding darkness or psychological pain, Bruce Wayne doesn't have much reason to don the cowl. This led to a very boring turn for Clooney as the Caped Crusader, one that is frankly pretty forgettable. Number 5, Adam West. The 1960s were a different time. Batman wasn't a dark, brooding Avenger with deadly skills, but rather he was a tongue-in-cheek ode to comics with 2 guys wearing tights. Of all the Batmen on the list, West is the most unique.
In order to play it for laughs, one had to never think that, you're funny. You just had to pull on that cowl and believe that nobody would recognize you. And I got to the point where I'd pull on the cowl that would trigger the whole character. And I think my approach was very childlike.
Whether he was fighting a shark, rehydrating members of the UN, or falling for the beautiful Lee Merriweather, he played the role with such Shakespearean gravitas and a bit of crazy. It was hard not to be mesmerized by his performance. Number 4, Val Kilmer. Of all the Batmen on the list, I like his Bruce Wayne the best. He played the role with an aristocratic smugness that was spot on. Bruce Wayne is a swinging bachelor, a captain of industry, an alpha male that rarely loses, and is also a bit of an asshole. He best embodied the smugness of Gotham's #1 benefactor.
It's not that much fun to be Bruce Wayne. He's kind of in turmoil, as a character, I was thinking of the character and doing stuff. It was kind of challenging playing the role, to be involved and appropriately involved in the depth of the truth of the character, the myth, and not be so far in it that you're out of the style.
Like Clooney though, Schumacher didn't really give his Batman much room to do anything interesting or memorable. He had a couple of interesting scenes with Nicole Kidman, but other than that it felt routine. The over-the-top bad guys and Chris O'Donnell were given much more opportunity to shine here. Number 3, Kevin Conroy. Whenever I read a Batman comic, it's Kevin Conroy's voice I hear in my head. His Batman voice is deep, dark, and forceful. He could soften it up when Bruce Wayne needed to wine and dine the ladies, or he could effectively deliver a sobering speech to make a bad guy rethink his life, crime.
Locally, there's a lot of difference between the Batman persona and the Bruce Wayne persona, even though it's the same person.
It's got to be one or the other. I can't have it both ways.
They have to be very, very cleanly distinct, and one is the mysterious and the darker corners of a man.
Conroy only had one shot at the big screen, with 1993's Batman Mask of the Phantasm. And since then, he has reprised the role for several animated series, video games, and direct-to-video movies, featuring different versions of the Caped Crusader. It's this version of the Bat that seemed to most closely resemble Bob Kane's take on the original character. It's also the one that I spent the most time with, having watched the Batman animated series every day after school. Number 2, Christian Bale. If there were a Batman hand-to-hand battle royale, I think Bale's version would be the one to beat. He's the only cinematic Batman that we get to see train as a ninja. He's also the most physically imposing. A lot of folks give him grief for that gravelly Batman voice.
You're garbage who kills for money.
True, it sounds ridiculous, especially after 2.5 hours, but his armor and physical presence make him a formidable foe for any of Arkham Asylum's most dangerous criminals.
Christian had a very controlled and specific approach to how he wanted to portray the aggression of this character, the animal-like quality.
You just couldn't pull it off properly unless you became a beast when you were inside of that suit.
Christopher Nolan gave us a Batman grounded in reality, with strong motivations and a bold visual style. He makes being Batman look really, really hard. Sure, you have lots of money, cool toys, and pretty ladies on your arm, but you'll get the crap beaten out of you every night. Given the choice, I'm not so sure I'd trade him places. That's not the case with any of the other Batmen on the list. This version of Batman has earned his pathos. And finally, my number 1 Batman, Michael Keaton. Sometimes you have to fight crazy with crazy. Of all of the cinematic versions of Batman, Keaton's is my favorite. There is a damaged quality to his Bruce Wayne. Under his likable demeanor, he harbors a dark psyche. You can see it in his eyes. Whether he's Bruce Wayne or the Bat, you can always tell that there's something more to this man than what's visible.
You look at him and he's just got those eyes and he looks crazy and he looks just like, but he also doesn't look like a superhero. It's like he looks like a guy who would need to dress up like a bat for effect.
I wish Tim Burton had explored the character more in Batman Returns. Instead of focusing on Catwoman and the Penguin, I would have liked to see Michael Keaton challenge the balance between the dark forces that constantly pull at his soul and his desire to have a more normal life. I like that this version seems to enjoy being Batman. You'll notice a little smile every now and then when he's fighting the bad guys. With the others, Batman is a job or a responsibility. With Keaton's version, it's more of a choice. He seems to relish fighting crime and indulging in his dark persona. Of all of the Batman, this one seems to have the most dichotomy, and Keaton plays him with a subtle grace. Well, that's my top 6 list. I want to hear yours. Leave your comments below, and keep checking back in with AintItCool.com for more Bat news and more Bat reviews. I'm John Airy.